Did you know that the average person has an attention span shorter than a goldfish? It's true. Studies show that while goldfish can focus for about 9 seconds, humans are down to just 8. With so little time to grab attention, how can we tell stories that stick? The answer lies in simplicity. Simple stories resonate because they connect with us on an emotional level. In fact, research from the Journal of Communication found that stories told with clear, straightforward plots are remembered 22 times more than complicated ones. That's a staggering number. So, what makes a story great? Is it complex characters, twisting plots, or fancy language? Surprisingly, no. The best stories often strip away the unnecessary and focus on what truly matters. They shine by being simple yet profound. In this article, we'll explore 6 powerful strategies to help you become a better storyteller. From understanding the importance of conflict to mastering the art of editing, each chapter will provide you with practical tips and surprising insights. So, get ready to unlock the secrets of storytelling that captivates and inspires. You'll learn why the simplest stories can leave the biggest impact, and how you can craft your own unforgettable tales. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Power of Simplicity. Less is more, but why? Many believe that complex stories are more sophisticated, but the opposite is often true. Simple stories stick with us because they focus on the essentials. Think about The Lion King. At its core, it's a simple story about a young lion's journey to adulthood and responsibility. Yet, it resonates with people of all ages because of its universal themes of loss, identity, and growth. Studies show that our brains process simple information more effectively. According to a study by Princeton University, clear and concise language leads to greater engagement and understanding. In storytelling, this means keeping the plot simple allows your audience to focus on the emotional and thematic depth without getting lost in unnecessary details. Simplicity also helps create more emotional impact. When you strip away the fluff, what's left is a clear emotional arc that resonates with the audience. William Zinsser, author of On Writing Well, said, "Clutter is the disease of American writing." The same could be said about storytelling. By avoiding unnecessary complications, you create room for emotional clarity. Chapter 2. Finding the hidden depth. Layering without complicating. While simple stories are powerful, that doesn't mean they can't have depth. The trick is to create layers within your story without making it feel overwhelming. You can do this by embedding subtext, using symbolism, or exploring universal themes beneath the surface. For instance, The Great Gatsby is a straightforward story about a man's obsession with wealth and status, but beneath that lies deeper commentary on the American dream and social class. Readers understand this without it being explicitly spelled out. This is what makes a simple story rich in meaning. One technique to add depth without complicating the plot is to use symbolism. Think of the green light in The Great Gatsby. It's just a light at the end of a dock, but it comes to symbolize Gatsby's unattainable dreams. You don't need a convoluted narrative to create layers of meaning. You just need well-placed symbols or themes. Another key to layering is to let your character's actions speak louder than words. Dialogue should serve the story, but body language, facial expressions, or even silence can often convey more than an entire conversation. Hemingway's iceberg theory suggests that what's left unsaid is often more important than what's on the surface. By trusting the audience to read between the lines, you add depth while keeping the story's structure simple. Chapter 3. The Human Element. Tapping into universal truths. At the heart of every great story is something deeply human. When we tap into universal truths, those emotions and experiences that everyone understands, we create stories that resonate. Stories about love, fear, hope, and loss have always been central to the human experience, and these are the simplest yet most powerful themes you can explore. A study by neuroscientist Paul Zak shows that character-driven stories can increase oxytocin production, a hormone linked to empathy and emotional connection. This is why stories that connect on a human level have such a profound impact. When your story taps into something universally understood, it creates a bridge between the characters and the audience. Consider Pixar's Up. The opening sequence tells the simple story of Carl and Ellie's life together, from their youth to Ellie's death. There's no fancy dialogue or complicated plot. It's just their life, condensed into a few minutes, and yet, it evokes intense emotion because it taps into the universal truth of love and loss. To harness this in your own storytelling, ask yourself what universal theme your story connects with. Are you exploring the joy of friendship, the pain of failure, or the excitement of a fresh start? Once you've identified that, focus on telling your story through the lens of that emotion. Keep the plot simple, but make sure the emotion is deep and real. If you're finding these tips helpful, make sure to subscribe for more insights and strategies on storytelling. Chapter 4: Conflict as Currency, the magic of tension. No story can exist without conflict. It's what drives your plot forward and keeps your audience hooked. But here's the thing, conflict doesn't need to be complicated to be powerful. In fact, the most engaging stories often center around a simple, yet high-stakes conflict. Think about Romeo and Juliet. The conflict is straightforward, two people in love, but their families hate each other. It's not complex, but it's incredibly effective because it taps into emotions we all understand: love, loyalty, and sacrifice. The tension is built on the simplicity of these opposing forces, making the stakes feel real and relatable. A report from Psychology Today showed that humans are hardwired to pay more attention to stories that involve conflict. Our brains release cortisol when we sense tension, and this hormone sharpens our focus. That's why stories with clear, simple conflicts feel more gripping. They activate our natural curiosity and desire for resolution. When writing your story, keep the conflict central. You don't need multiple subplots fighting for attention. Focus on one main struggle. Whether it's internal, a character battling their own fears, or external, a character facing an enemy or obstacle, make sure that the conflict is clear and constant. One way to keep the tension alive is by raising the stakes. Ask yourself, what's at risk if the protagonist fails? The higher the stakes, the more engaging the story. But don't overcomplicate things. Sometimes, the most compelling tension is when everything is on the line in a simple scenario. Chapter 5: Simplicity in Structure, Mastering the 3-act frame. Many great stories follow the classic 3-act structure, and for good reason. It's simple, it's familiar, and it works. In fact, studies show that audiences tend to connect more deeply with stories that follow a traditional structure, because it mirrors how we experience life: beginnings, middles, and ends. The first act is all about setup. This is where you introduce the characters, setting, and conflict. Keep it simple and focused. Your audience doesn't need to know every detail about the character's backstory right away. Instead, give them just enough to understand the world and what's at stake. Screenwriter Robert McKee, in his book Story, emphasizes that stories are about principles, not rules. A clear structure allows flexibility for creativity, while still keeping the narrative grounded. In the second act, things get more intense. This is where your conflict escalates, and the protagonist faces obstacles. But remember, you don't need to pile on complication after complication. In fact, doing so can confuse your audience. Instead, focus on deepening the conflict you introduced in the first act. This keeps the story moving without losing clarity. Finally, in the third act, you resolve the conflict. It's tempting to throw in a twist or a complex resolution, but the most satisfying endings are often the simplest. Your audience doesn't need a convoluted plot twist to feel closure, they just need a resolution that feels earned. Think about The Shawshank Redemption. The ending is straightforward: Andy escapes and finds freedom. It's simple, but it's powerful because the whole story was building toward that moment. If you enjoyed these tips and want to dive deeper into the art of storytelling, be sure to subscribe for more valuable insights and strategies.